Hi, I'm Jocelyn Ruggiero, and this is Snippets. Today I'm talking to Melissa Barton. Melissa Barton is the curator of drama and prose for the Yale Collection of American Art. She is also the author of this wonderful new book by Yale Press. It's called Gather Out of Stardust, Harlem Renaissance Album, and she is also the curator of an exhibition of the same name here at the Yale's Beinecke Rare Manuscripts Library. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for talking to me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So I really enjoyed this book. I learned so much. And for me, the way you structured it was so important in my understanding of the story, the narrative of the Harlem Renaissance. It was really illuminating. So can you tell me about the different sections, what the different sections were, and why you started with the one you started with?
Sure. So I was thinking I wanted to do a book that showed 50 objects from the collection related to the Harlem Renaissance, and I was trying to figure out a good way to organize those things. And I knew also that I wanted the title of the book to have the word gather in it. So I had already decided that, and then I kind of came upon this idea that, oh my gosh, I could organize it. I made like a map of Post-it notes on the wall in my office and tried to figure out all these things, and figured out that I could use synonyms for the word gather to organize 5 sections of the book. And so I started with a section called Muster, where I'm talking really about some of the beginning moments of this period and some of the ways in which all of the kind of right forces aligned really to make this moment possible. And I start the book with photographs of a very, I think, under-known protest
I didn't know.
Called the Silent Protest Parade, which was enacted in 1917 by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People in response to these violent attacks on African Americans in East St. Louis. And so the 10,000 people was the estimate marched down Fifth Avenue in New York City, in Midtown, not in Harlem, but between Central Park and Madison Square. And so I thought, that would be
in silence.
In silence.
In silence. The photographs are very powerful.
It's a really chilling thing to imagine. And so I knew I wanted to start with that, and I thought muster would be a really great word to use to start, to describe a peaceful protest, but really this kind of time of people coming together to prepare to do something. The last section is called Collect. The exhibition is really focused in some ways on the ways that the formation of libraries were instrumental in capturing the history of the Harlem Renaissance in the very moment that it was going on. And so
informally, right? Or it seems like there was a lot of informal collecting.
There was informal collecting, and there was formal collecting as well. So the Schomburg, the library, the part of the New York Public Library that's called the Schomburg Center was actually founded in this time through a donation of a collection of books. Or it was a purchase. But so all of the creation of these libraries and the creation of these more informal collections is a really big part. So I kind of have those as bookends. The getting together, actually, people, the idea of a get together was one that I really wanted to emphasize, the friendships. I was working with some of this material with students yesterday, and one of them remarked to me how amazed she was that these writers were not more competitive with each other. And I was like, it's really true. They were really friends and working together and cheering each other's victories.
And there was room. I was surprised by what you talked about. You quoted a statistic, I can't remember it exactly, about the number of African American writers published during this time period compared to the decade prior.
Yeah, it about quadrupled. So I don't remember the exact numbers either, but it was about 4 times as many. And publishers, really, publishers that we now recognize as kind of the vanguard of American literature at that time, were really taking notice of African American writers. So the Knopfs, Bonai and Liveright, Harper, some really prominent publishers were publishing African American writers.
So these gatherings, tell me more about these gatherings, because they were taking place in all different places. And it seems, why I asked you about the muster section first, because I had no idea that the formation of the NAACP preceded this and all this political activism. It seemed that, of course, that was the foundation of these of what was to follow. How do you see those social and political events leading into these gatherings?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a real, the movement was very self-conscious, so there was a real awareness that something was going on, that, you know, historians now mark certain very important dinner parties as being really central to kind of the networks that were created. So Charles Johnson, who was the editor of Opportunity magazine, which was the magazine of the National Urban League, he organized a dinner to celebrate, you know, the ostensible purpose of the dinner was to celebrate a new book by Jessie Redmond Fawcett, who was an African-American novelist. She was also the literary editor of the Crisis magazine. So he then invited not only all of the members of the what he called the younger group of African-American writers, but then all of these kind of downtown Greenwich Village tastemakers.
Yes.
He invited also. So Eugene O'Neill was invited to the dinner, Edna St. Vincent Millay. And so, and he had all these people together, and there's this big celebration of like, wow, look at all these publications, look at all this great poetry that's coming out, look at this novel, and something really big is going on here. And they're kind of able to say that through the force of these gatherings. And then at that gathering is when, you know, Paul Kellogg decides to do a special issue of Survey magazine about this movement. So that's, you know, so Elaine Locke gets to edit that, and that turns into the book, The New Negro, which is, you know, a tremendously important book marking this period. And it is in itself a little collection, right? It's an anthology. So that's an important aspect of that as well.
I had no idea there were so many publications and magazines and that you show in the exhibition and in the book that I had no idea. There were so many, and like you said, so many opportunities for young writers and multi-generations too were gathering, right?
Yeah, right.
I love this. We're standing in front of a, would you tell everyone what we're standing in front of?
Sure. This is the original artwork for, it's called A Nightclub Map of Harlem. It was drawn by Elmer Sims Campbell, who was an illustrator, a professional illustrator who primarily worked for Esquire magazine. So this illustration, this was published as a spread in a magazine that was very short-lived called Manhattan, a weekly for wakeful New Yorkers, and then kind of gained a lot more popularity, had a kind of second life because it was published in the 70s as the end papers to Cab Calloway's autobiography, because Cab Calloway is featured right here. So it's this hilarious, very
it's very cheeky. You can't see it well in this video, but come see the exhibition or get the book. It's wonderful. It's very cheeky.
Yeah, very tongue-in-cheek kind of portrayal of Harlem nightlife. You know, there's this like traffic jam up here, people from downtown, you know, white patrons trying to get into Connie's Inn, and you know, that kind of thing is going on. The police are playing cards in the police station and talking about the illegal gambling that's going on outside. So there's a lot of jokes.
Well, this actually brings me to another thing that I learned, that I did not realize that the Cotton Club did not serve black patrons.
Yes, that's correct.
So when I know that in popular culture, what most people know of the Harlem Renaissance, the Cotton Club and those entertainers are one of the first things everyone thinks of. And you really talk about that in this book, and of course this Harlem Renaissance had that other aspect of these people driving up from Fifth Avenue, white patrons, to go to certain clubs, and that was really illuminating.
Yeah, that's what the song, the famous Irving Berlin song, "Putting on the Ritz," is about that. So it's about going uptown to Harlem, and you know, there is an older version of lyrics that many people don't know that talks more explicitly about that, going uptown to Harlem to party. Essentially, there were plenty of clubs and speakeasies that, of course, did cater to African American patrons as well. So there was a real combination,
right?
You know, I think everybody was trying to get like a piece of that experience. Much in the same way that, you know, underground popular culture now becomes, you know, much more mainstream popular culture.
Right.
So, yeah.
Great. So, is there anything you learned in putting this book together, or any insight you had that you didn't have before, just seeing all this work gathered together?
I think I definitely learned a lot factually. I mean, I knew a little bit about this period, but I also knew, and I had read a lot of criticism about this period. It's because it's part of my specialty, and but I learned a lot more. I learned a lot more about this idea of the conscious structuring of the movement by these kind of by this leadership in the course of it. And I think that idea of the collective and of collecting is something I still am really trying to figure out for myself. Like, are those things related, or are they just metaphors for each other, or and so I'm trying to figure that out. I'm still interested in that.
So this the title of the exhibition comes from a Langston Hughes poem.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that poem and why you felt it was the appropriate title for this exhibition and book?
Sure. Yeah. So I said, I wanted the word "gather" to be in the title of the book, because I think I wanted to stress that this movement was as much a social movement and was really about these groups of people working together, collaborating. And so I just took out my collected poems of Langston Hughes and looked through the first line index to find a poem with the word "gather" that started with the word "gather," and came across this one. It's a little later. It was published in 1947. Dream Dust is the name of the poem. It was published in 1947, which is a little later than this period. But I thought that idea of stardust is such a beautiful, a charming, concept, and it seemed really to fit with this period and the ways that the allures of this period that many people recognize, and that of bringing together something bigger out of smaller things. So it seemed to fit really well.
It fits perfectly. It fits perfectly. That's why I asked you, because at the end, again, this book. For me, reading this book and then coming to the exhibition really brought together the whole narrative of this period that was really illuminating. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking to you, and I highly recommend everyone get this book from Yale Press. Come see this exhibition. It's really, really, really stunning. Thank you.
Thank you.